Welcome to the next episode of Fellowship in Essential Oils. My name is Adam. Liz, how are you today?
I'm really well, thanks, Adam. But we are a bit dodgy. We've got terrible rain, have had for days here, and we just had a power outage. So I hope we're going to be okay and be able to stay on air today.
So if you disappear on me, I won't take it personally that I've said something wrong.
Well, might be.
Could be that too. Well, I hope you don't disappear on us, because this week we're looking at Peru Balsam. This is an oil that, I know you in the past you've talked about, you've got your inner circle. This is one that's not in my inner circle. It might not even be in my outer circle. It's kind of sitting there and I really don't use it too much, but I know that you're very, very passionate about it today. So today might be the Liz won't shut up show, but I've got a few things that I'll share along the way. So what can you tell us first of all about where does this oil come from?
Well, so the first thing to say is Peru Balsam does not come from Peru. And so the whole story behind that is so interesting. So I will kind of build up to it, because I think in the future, maybe this will be another subject of one of my books, because I'm so fascinated by this story. And there's so much more research that could be done that I can't see that anybody else has done before. But it is an oil that my mum always used. It's always been in our family. We've always used it a lot, specifically for eczema and for dermatitis and that kind of stuff. But it's one of those oils that I have fads on, and I go, oh, I want to have it around me all the time, and then I put it away and forget about it. And usually when I've put it away, it's because my husband's gone, oh, you've not got that out again. It damages everything it touches. So if anybody hasn't seen it before, it's a really thick, it's like treacle. And if you put it in the bath, don't put it in the bath because it ruins the enamel. And don't put it on your windowsill, because if it goes through the paint, and then when you paint over it, it comes through the paint again. So it's a particular popular oil in my house. But I wanted to talk a bit about the history, because if you look it up in Battaglia, for instance, he has like one line that's one of those kind of statements that I go, wait, what? And he talks about how suddenly the Pope in the 16th century said, oh, we can have this part of the holy anointing oil. And I was like, wait, what? What's the story behind that? So I went on this enormous journey to find out. So first of all, what is Peru Balsam essential oil? Well, so we call it the balsam tree, so as we're not too confusing. The balsam tree is an evergreen tree, which is very, very tall, grows to around about 130 feet high. As I say, evergreen, big kind of long leaves like fingers, pretty white flowers with very long yellow stamens, very fragrant. Everything about all parts of the plant are fragrant. And these stamens, after the bees and insects have pollinated, are obviously fertilized, become a fruit, and actually become a bean. This is Jack and the Beanstalk, really. This is a really tall beanstalk. And so the pods are around about 10 centimeters long, but just one little bean inside each one, and they're black. So you could be excused for thinking that came from the bean, but it does not. It comes from the bark of the tree. So the people that harvest this are called balsameros, and they, in times gone by, were important people, big tribal industry, and it's been very much passed from father to son. But now there's only a handful of these, but it is still harvested in the same way. So what they do, remembering that this is a massive tall tree, they go way, way up the tree on ropes and find the darkest part of the bark. And so it's the darkest part of the bark on the darkest tree they can find. And so these trees have got to be like 25 to 30 years old before they start doing what they do, which is secreting the oil in response to being injured. So bearing in mind, these balsam arrows are probably about 100 feet in the air in a forest full of these trees. They then get a great big flaming torch and burn the bark, so that the tree, so cruel really when you think about it from the point of the tree goes and goes rigid, sends all of its essential oils, not essential oils, but essential oils, to the surface and into the bark. So what they do then is they like score it like a crosshatch, and they take off the bark. So they've got like a strip taken, a strip left, a strip taken, a strip left. Then they put rags on it to stop it bleeding and to catch any more of the blood, the resin that comes out. Come down the tree, lay it on the ground, leave it to dry for a week, go back up, go and get all of the rags, and then they collect it all together and they put it into a boiling pot. So obviously the sun has softened the resins by this point. And then they boil that, and what happens then is the water separates and the exudate goes hard, goes to the bottom, so they can just take that off. And then they distill that, and that's what we get here, which is the essential oil. So I don't know if it's too dark to see, but it's really thick, resinous. No, you can't really see it, but it's like treacle, really. And I mean, we've got records right back to sort of 1570 that describe that it was done that way even then. So this is carried on and carried on.
I actually did find a 1-minute video on YouTube of watching the guy with the ropes up, burning it, fanning it, doing the whole shebang kind of thing. Yeah.
And so
we'll share that below.
Yeah, so there is also like another essential that's similar that I never really see for sale anymore, but we do have in our collection, which is tolu. And tolu is kind of a cousin of the tree. And rather than sort of going right and incising, they kind of just stab it, they don't set it on fire. But so that's a kind of a yellowy one, but very, very similar kind of thing. So what you get though from this oil then is this thick treacle, which smells really, the best description is like vanilla, but with smoke. And not only does it smell nice, but it tastes nice. So we'll address that later, but don't get eating this one. But we'll talk about that later. Has many medicinal properties that were documented right back when they discovered America, and also religious significance. So the religious significance is probably what made it famous in the first place. That obviously when they went to the Americas, the Spaniards saw them using this tree. And there's Francisco Hernandez in 1570 does a really big monograph on it, and most of our information comes from that. So that's like 80 years after they've been there, something like that. But he talks about how he sees them growing in the royal palaces, in the gardens of the royal palaces, and that they use it for wounds and for skin disorders, as well as water infections. But he says it is used for an incomparable number of diseases. So that, I mean, that's high praise, isn't it? What's most fascinating, I think, to the church at that time is, of course, they've got this oil that's used for the mummification of the Inca bodies, but is also continually used for worshipping the idols of the ancestors. So then this becomes quite a complex thing for them, because they've got, if you look at Columbus got there 1492, immediately 1493 the church gets involved and says, right, we'll split these areas between Spain and Portugal, and I don't care who has them as long as you spread Christianity. So this is like the main task, and they've got this fantastic tree that really they don't want to outlaw in any way, because it's such a healing tree and there's so much of it, and they're using it in religious purposes. So what the church does in 1540 is they say, right, what we're going to do then, because it's becoming quite expensive to buy balsam of Gilead to make a holy anointing oil, that's very expensive, and it's a bit of a pain in the arse trying to get it out of Alexandria now, because they're really trying to sort of levy us for all the taxes. We're going to use that. So they make a papal bull. So 1541, the Pope says, right, from now on, that's what you're going to use. You can use that as a replacement for it. We've prayed over it for a long time. This is specifically says we've prayed over it for a long time. And the reason why we've decided on this is because it will be such a good oil for healing the sick because of its effects on wounds. But there, he records it as Peru Balsam. But it's not Peru. And we know that it's not Peru because we have this document still somewhere lost in the Vatican, but it does exist in Guatemala, which was at that point was El Salvador, where most of the oil comes from. It grows Brazil to Mexico, not Peru. But the reason why they called it Peru Balsam was around that time, there were so many pirates, so many privateers. If you look around about 1572, Francis Drake sacked the port of Peru looking for gold and for all sorts of manners, and presumably looking for Peru Balsam, because the church deliberately misled the Protestants to tell them.
So the name is basically a decoy saying, oh, it comes from Peru. If you want to steal it, go to Peru.
Exactly.
Oh, wow.
So you can't tell that story slowly, really, can you? Because it's fascinating, isn't it? But yeah, right from 1570, we can see the properties laid out really, really well. So those are skin healing, water infections, coughs that won't bring up sputum, so like unpredictable coughs, abscesses that are corrupt, in his words, so they won't heal, and also hemorrhoids. So those are the main physical things that they were used for then and still used now. I will stop talking for a bit and come back to episode 2 in a moment. So have you got any thoughts you would like to add or to say from that?
I think it's really interesting. Yes, that it has all these different healing properties. It seems like there seems to be a theme in the physicality of like helping to things that aren't kind of wanting to burst out but can't.
Yeah, that's good.
It's really interesting as well. Yeah. Just a couple of side notes as well, especially for those that are doTERRA customers. There can be some confusion with that word balsam. There is a balsam fir, which does is more North American. That's a totally different oil to what we're talking about here. And although it's not available through doTERRA, it is in one of our blends called Native Bush, which is an Australian and New Zealand exclusive oil. So you can get your hot little hands on it in that type of way as well. So those are little things that people might be going, well, what about can I get it? And yes, there are other companies obviously that you can get it from that would be reputable to get the pure one. But just good to know it's not balsam fir, and it is in our blend Native Bush. But no, go on, episode 2.
Yeah. Well, so I didn't really finish episode 1 when I think about it, because of course there was another agenda of the church when they did that. Because why would you spend all that money buying balm of Gilead and sending it all the way to El Salvador, which is where most of the oil comes from now, known as the Saviour, isn't it? Because it's christened. And then they're going to embalm with this oil. And remember, the word Christ does mean embalmed with oil. So the propaganda is like amazing when you think about it. It's part of their way of saying, well, we'll adopt all your cultures, we'll adopt all of that, but we're just going to change the name of the god. That's fascinating. But so we look at it and we think this is an amazingly healing oil, which it is. Everybody should be using it, but the answer to that is no, they should not, because it is a really high incidence of allergens. So research shows that 3.8% of general population have allergies to some constituent within it. So this is really an oil that you should experiment smelling, doing a little test on your finger first before you shove it in the bath, before you put it on all of those things, because actually there's really quite a high likelihood that you may be allergic to something in it. And what's more, I talked earlier about how it tastes nice. Actually, it's one of the most common additions to medicines, but also common additions to food. So, for example, it's in Coca-Cola because it smells and tastes like vanilla. And there are loads and loads of foods that have the similar kind of chemicals in it that are high possibilities of allergens. So the sort of two main allergens, the benzoate, which is, didn't do my homework, about 60% of the oil, and then cinnamic acid, which is about 5% of the oil. They're the main allergens in it. Cinnamic acid, for example, turns up in tomatoes. So if you're allergic to tomatoes, the chances are you're going to be allergic to this. Likewise, it's in like cloves, nutmegs, all of those kind of things. So if you are somebody who kind of has allergies to those or gets migraines to those, there is a chance that you'll be allergic to this. And the other thing is that it actually is used on some adhesives, on plasters. So again, if you've had plaster allergies, sticking plaster allergies, it could be this, not necessarily, because there's lots of different things, but it could be. So that's a big thing. So if you have got an allergy to it, then usually it's a contact dermatitis, which is a shame, isn't it, when you think that we're talking about something that's so good for eczema, dermatitis, psoriasis, all of those things respond really well to it. But also, if you're allergic, that is probably going to be the first thing. But sometimes if you drink, if like somebody who's drunk it in Coke, for example, lips, tongue, hives on the skin. So the chances are you will have reacted in some way to it before, and think about that before you use it. But
so in summary, if you said issues with tomatoes, Band-Aids, or Coca-Cola, it could be, that would be a bit of a red flag straight away.
Yes, I think so. Yes, I think so. But it is in so many things. So, for example, cough medicines, for good reason, you know, it's very expectorant, so it's in cough medicine. So it's right across. So what I would say is, whoever you are, approach this gently. But if you can use it, then it's fantastic, because it smells so much like vanilla, and so all of that medicine we expect from vanilla, of feeling comforted and cozy and all of that stuff, translates into this, which is much cheaper. But also just it's such a therapeutic oil, so it's interesting that, just for a change, go at it with real care is what I would say. The other thing is to really stress, you know, I don't want to be in a situation where people say, but it's in Coke, so it's easy to digest. So there is a maximum dilution that you can put in, like anything that you're going to eat, which is 0.0015%. So that's really low, way lower than you would use if you were going to put it in a capsule or whatever. And so therefore you're going way over what you can have. And the reason why you would put it in foods, and for example, is it's antibacterial, it's antifungal. So it's, you know, it's got all of these preservative qualities. And just again, such an amazingly clever and interesting oil.
Yeah. So on sticking around this physical, and there's so many different things that I was seeing that, you know, so good for getting stuff out of the body. How have you used it in maybe your home and with your clients? When are you like, right, we need the Peru Balsam?
Yeah, so remember that I don't see that many clients. So there is never going to be a huge back catalogue. But for me, I had this injury on my leg just before I got married. I woke up in the morning and I still don't know what happened to it, whether I burnt it on a hot water bottle or whether I'd been bitten. But I had a huge blister that was like that sort of size. And it was deep in my leg. And I went to the doctors, and the doctor went, I don't like that. Neither do I. Anyway, he put like a see-through plaster over it. And he said, leave it on for 3 days, then take it off. Well, this plaster it kept it clean. But when I took it off, it was still wide open. It healed, but the scab just get deeper and deeper and deeper. And I've still got an enormous scab scar where it was. And I had to dig it out because I was like, this is too disgusting to have on my wedding day. And then I put Peru Balsam around it, and it healed within days, even though it had been open for about 3 weeks, one way or another. So that was very good. And Mum always talks about, she often used it for eczema. and for dermatitis. But again, you really stress you do need to do a patch test first. But for me, this is really so lovely if you feel like you are in the middle of a very, very stressful situation. It feels really, well, imagine you're the tree and you're being burnt. You know, what this seems to say is this too shall pass. This happens all the time and you get through it. And that's the kind of way I use it. I do use it in the bath, but don't tell anybody. I dilute it now before I put it in the bath. But also just like as a massage oil before I go to bed in a body butter, because it does smell like it smells so sensuous. It's lovely. But so yeah, those are the main things. Yeah.
And talking about that kind of heavenly vanilla pleasurable kind of aroma to it as well. I went down a bit of a rabbit hole yesterday where I was like, ooh, chakras of resin oils. And we won't get into it too much in this episode. We'll definitely talk on this on our masterclass that's happening on Thursday. And I know lots of people got their tickets, but there's probably someone listening who hasn't got their ticket yet. So get that. But I think this would be, of all the resin oils, I don't think there's another one that I would allocate to the heart chakra like I would allocate Balsam Peru or Peru Balsam too, because it's real loving, nurturing, pleasurable kind of energy to it.
Yeah, and you know what? I don't have an answer. I knew you were going to ask me about like medical astrology and all that, and I don't have an answer because probably my brain's too lodged into that vein of like remembering stuff. So I don't really perceive it on a different level, and I haven't worked with it long enough to do that. So I haven't got an answer to argue or agree, but yes, you can definitely feel it there. And of course you would, the way that it gets rid of all the sputum and the crap off your chest when you're coughing and stuff. But yeah.
And I think also talking about its aroma, if we were to have a competition of best smelling resin oil, I know some people, they love their frankincense or they love another oil, but I think this would be probably the best smelling resin oil that I've seen in my life.
I don't know. That's controversial. That's controversial. That's myrrh for me. but it is really beautiful. If you haven't smelt it, you are going to really like it. Yeah.
For me, as I was reading up about it and checking in with it and meditating on it and working with it, kind of my experience with it and reading other people's as well, I feel this is a really great one. As we're talking about that expectorant kind of getting phlegm out of the lungs and all those different things. A really nice one for healing of the heart. It's a beautiful heartbreak oil. I guess, just like the tree has been burnt, often when we end a relationship, there's some sense of being betrayed or burnt. And I think it would help with that. And I get this kind of beautiful image of it almost puts a cape of protection over the heart.
I love that. I do love that. Yes. But I think also using this brain rather than that brain, I think we probably have to say it's very much a Saturn thing. It's about time, the way that the Incas and the Mayans and Aztecs were using it as ancestor worship, and this idea of like hard, dull, it's taking forever and ever for me to get out of this awful time, it never ends. That's Saturn kind of stuff, isn't it?
Yeah. And I guess even the consistency of the essential oil being so thick, it does take, it's almost like vetiver. Do you mean vetiver is very much about stillness and slowing down? It's almost as though those thick oils, that guaiac wood vetiver, they're a myrrh, slow down, allow that healing to happen over time and that patience as well.
I mean, I don't know if I can show. See if I can. See if it'll drip. It's almost like glue. So like when vetiver and let's do that. Yeah, see how it like sticks?
Yeah.
Anything that needs sticking back together will love this. It's like Evo stick for the body.
yeah.
Product placement. Apologies for that.
All good. I was just thinking of a joke. I always say, why vetiver is so good for getting, helping you get a good night's sleep. And by the time you've got it all out of the bottle, you're half asleep already.
You're half asleep anyway. Yeah. I mean, it isn't as slow as that. It does move quite quickly, but it just is really thick. Yeah.
And interesting talking about the ancestors. There's a lot of talk about it being used to connect with our ancestors and connect with, gods, heaven, angels. A few references, and I can really get this as well. connecting to the plant kingdom and like the plant divas. Is this oil could facilitate with that as well, which it's got this sweetness, and we often think of plant divas of most of the time. I guess plant divas have all different characteristics, but there's a bit of a fade or a sweetness to their energy. So it really helps you to drop into that.
Oh, that's clever. Yes. I mean, going back to what we were saying about this, the chrism, they were specific about it. It was the holy chrism and the oil of and the oil for the sick. Not oil of catechumens. So oil of catechumens was the oil that they used for exorcisms. So not so much involved in spiritual aspect, like as in the spirits for some reason, but for healing the body, and also, of course, anointing. That the holy chrism was for baptism, and for if somebody was becoming a bishop or something like that, or for transitions. So it's an anointing oil for transitions from one state to the next, and that's by order of the Vatican.
Yeah, interesting. One other aspect that really came out strong for me as well is a really good oil to use as part of meditation when we're doing anything of creative visualization or manifestation. I think a lot of the time we approach our magical or our spiritual work of like almost in desperation. Like, I really need to find that money, or I really need to find a lover, and that kind of thing. And as we know, we kind of work in a vibrational world where we attract what we're a vibrational match to. So if we're focusing on I'm desperate for money, and that's the energy we put out into the world, then we're just kind of rippling out desperation for money and not actually that feeling. We know that this is a feeling world, and if we want to, you almost have to kind of fake it till you make it energetically. So you have to pretend that you have a partner. You have to pretend that you have the money and feel what that's like, and then send that out in ripples to the universe. And I find that this oil would be absolutely amazing for helping us move into that positive space of like, this is what it will feel like to have that love, to have that money, to have that intention coming in, and to make sure that we're actually a vibrational match of what we want. Because a lot of the time, I always say the universe doesn't home deliver. We've got to kind of meet it halfway. So it's not, we don't put out our wish like a birthday candle and go, wait for it to come. We've got to do some of the work. We've just got to start faking it till we make it. Kind of thing. And I think in manifestation, if you're working with someone or you're working with yourself and there's a bit of desperation in there, working with this and feeling the joy because of that beautiful, luscious, vanilla, smoky kind of aroma, it's going to make you smile. It's got to lift your vibration. It's got to lift your cheer in that way as well.
Yeah, definitely. And I do also want to say, though, I think there is an element with this oil, a bit like frankincense and spikenard, that we should be saying, but it's a sacred oil. And it is for healing, and it is for doing sacred work. And so don't just go out and use it for everything. If you think about how many things that Peru Balsam can be used for, I mean, we're talking about medicine, we're talking about spiritual, it's food, it's wood, well sought after for furniture. It's in a bad state, sustainably. And I think around about 1990, they were saying, we've got problems with this. There's not enough of it to go around. And then even after that, they went, oh no, one of we're confusing this with another species. So a lot of these that we've counted in that count aren't actually that tree. Oh, no. So it was way worse than we thought. So it's a medicine. It's a spiritual oil. It's not one to just go, you wouldn't put it in a diffuser to make yourself calm anyway. And if you do, then it serves you right that you ruined your diffuser. But so it's for hard times. This is one of those oils. Also on that note, we don't bung loads on. We use very small amounts. So we only use 0.4% on the skin. And although we don't actually have a warning about phototoxicity, it's not a phototoxic oil, but it does seem that the allergens, when somebody has an allergy, seems to be a phototoxic allergy. So whilst we don't have a warning on it, I would definitely say this is an oil for nighttime, for evenings, before we settle, rather than getting up in the morning and going, well, it doesn't have the energy of mornings anyway. But just be careful about that too.
One thing that we haven't talked about on this show yet that talking about using it sparingly and for special occasions, it's kind of the expiry date or how long do oils last. And, it can vary from oil to oil, but with this oil, if you were to buy a bottle, should we be worried about, if I don't use it in 2 years, it's going to be useless?
So different oils have different shelf lives depending on shelf lives, depending on the main chemical constituents in them. So what you would normally be worried about is if an oil is high in monoterpenes, because they decay quickly, and it's usually those that are phototoxic. No, it's not high in those. And in actual fact, this bottle that I am messing with has got my stepdad's writing on the top. So he's been dead 20 years now. So that's still going strong. I'm still using that. And so this isn't one of those oils that you would have to replace loads and loads. No.
Yeah. So it's worth looking for, again, as we always say, looking for a reputable company that obviously has a high quality oils. And we also want to be really mindful of the sustainability as well. So if you can find a little bit about that. But this is it's an investment oil in a way that you'd have there, sitting there for special occasions, and a really valuable one when you do need it.
Yeah, and there are actually, to mention that there is another version of it. I mean, I'm talking about it being really thick and it's going to ruin your diffuser, which it will, and it serves you right if you do it. But but there is a vacuum distilled version, which is not as thick. It's not as either, it hasn't got that richness of taste. But that is commercially available, and you could put that in your diffuser. But yeah, from a plea from the trees. Be humane rather than being a typical human about it. Yeah,
it's so true that we, sometimes an oil isn't available because nature, I know there's been issues with oils like helichrysum and Roman chamomile in the past where there's been, storms or droughts and different things, and people that oil's not available as well. And with these big tree oils, Brew Branco, which is another resin oil that comes from similar region type of thing, they're actually finding that the boosting up the publicity of this oil is actually helping because the tree is better alive than dead, and so it's actually helping to save the forest in the area, because they're like, we can't chop this bit down of the Amazon because we need those trees in that way. But people need to be mindful. Rosewood is a classic one that for a long time, I see it in a lot of the old aromatherapy texts, and I saw some oracle cards that had rosewood as one of the cards, and it is a nice smelling oil, but the sustainability of that is very questionable a lot of the time.
Yeah, I agree totally. And actually, going back to that papal bull, when they said you could use, and that's what it's called when it's an edict. I'm not calling it bull, but
yeah, bull.
Yeah. It does say in there that if you chop the trees down now, because they have become part of the holy anointing oil, if you chop them down, it would be sacrilegious. So, so you can't pick and choose the bits. If you want to be observing that it's a holy oil, then you need to observe that it is a holy oil, and you can't just keep taking it.
It's a holy oil from a holy tree. So honor the
Correct.
tree. Again, don't just honor the gift that it gives us, type of thing.
Yeah.
Really important. Yeah. So for you overall, how would you personify it, or personify it as an oil, or even spiritually, where would you be reaching for it on that high emotions and high spiritual kind of level, do you think?
To translate, this too shall pass. We all get to times where we can't fight any longer. And if it was going for, I always describe fennel as being like that, as if you're running a marathon, physical battles. Fennel's really good for that, but this is very much I just can't take the heat any longer. And we all have that sometimes, don't we? And it's very good for it's almost like anesthetic to the spirit. It just goes shh. And then the next morning you're like, I can do this now. I can do this.
Yeah. And even when you think about the two words that you've described, the aroma of smoky and vanilla-ish, vanilla we obviously associate with pleasure. I remember reading that the most loved aroma around the world is actually vanilla. It's the most popular smell, regardless of culture and background and that type of thing. So we've got the vanilla, which is that pleasure, but that smokiness, it's almost like it represents not the light at the end of the tunnel, but the light after coming out of a thick smoke or kind of coming out of a fire.
Yep.
And, you know, in places like Australia, one of the biggest risks we have to our livelihoods, the environment and so on, are these devastating bushfires that come through and destroy everything. And that's kind of, whenever we've been burned, whenever we've gone through that fire, it's almost, I guess if you had to give it an animal, it's kind of like a bit of a phoenix out of the ashes kind of oil in that way.
Yeah. Agreed.
Yeah. So another amazing essential oil to add to the collection. Put it there as a, you know, put it on the top shelf oil.
I can't really see us talking. We will talk about it in the masterclass, but there's not that much else to learn about that one. So I guess we'll be concentrating more on the other three. But I mean, I have a wealth of information to just give about lavender on its own. But if you do have questions that you want to ask about Peru Balsam, I'm more than happy to be down that rabbit hole forever and ever, amen. So do post them, and anything you want to know about the masterclass in the questions below.
Yes, please do. Remember, that happens this Thursday, the 27th. It is at 8 p.m. What time? London time? I'm trying to remember.
7 p.m. I think.
7 p.m. London time.
It says in the description anyway.
It does, yeah. So we've got all the links. Click on that, grab your spot, and remember, even if you can't be there, you get whether you attend live or not. We want everyone to attend live so we can interact with you. But regardless, everyone who has bought their ticket will get the recording, and you have lifetime access for that. So you can go back over and over again. And this will be a monthly event. So next month, we'll be talking about 4 different oils. So one oil that we'll definitely be talking about next month is what we're going to cover next episode is Palo Santo. We're going to stick around the same region. Yeah,
one of the ladies on the comments on my video said, "Oh, can you talk about Palo Santo?" And I thought, well, yes, that would be nice because I like it, but I don't know huge amounts about it. So we'll be getting into that next week.
So whether you're watching us on YouTube or listening through one of the podcast platforms, if you do have a request, reach out to us. Let us know because we're open for suggestions. There's a lot. We've got a lot of oils to get through. I don't know how long we're going to be doing this for, but there's a lot to do. And when you come up with ones like Peru Balsam, I'm like, oh yeah, I didn't even think of that one. So we could be here for we could be up for 300 to 400 episodes. Who knows?
Well, I do think it's interesting when it's ones that other people don't talk about. You know, there's so much information out there, and when you look on the internet, they regurgitate the same information over and over again. You know, I'm guilty of doing it. But, you know, in this, sometimes it's way more interesting to know outside of just what that oil is. There's so many secret stories that really give huge nuance to the meaning, isn't there?
And I think anyone who's interested in aromatherapy, there's a real benefit of experimenting with all different essential oils because, lavender's great for this and, you know, maybe lavender might be great for sleep, but some people find that lavender's not quite their jam. It's Roman chamomile or it's vetiver or it's cedarwood or something else. So finding your own inner circle of the oils that you really love and work really well for you, because chemically we are all different in different ways. So we will dance with different oils. There's even a small percentage of people that I find lavender wakes them up and perks them up. So you need to find something else. So definitely dance with all the ones that we talk about and find your own inner circle. I love this idea of we all have our own oil inner circle.
So I think we should just recap what the oils are we're going to do in the masterclass.
Yep. So we're talking about lavender. We're talking about the mandarins. We're talking about helichrysum. And I know there's a lot of people because Chiron went retrograde yesterday. So a lot of people have been very interested in their Chiron. What's their Chiron sign? What does it mean? How do we use helichrysum? So we're going to talk a little bit about that and go down a bit of a rabbit hole on Chiron and helichrysum. And then we're also going to be talking about today's oil, Peru Balsam, as well. And I might go down a bit of a tangent with chakras and resin oils. Who knows where we'll go?
What I'd be interested in, actually, is given that I am a Melissa priestess and we're dream priestesses, Chiron going retrograde really switched the dreams on for me last night. So I've been scribbling and scribbling. I'm interested to know what people have been dreaming about too. If you've had anything interesting that was maybe related to Greece, I want to know about it at the workshop.
Yeah, and Chiron retrograde is a time when dreams will increase as well. So not only did Chiron go retrograde yesterday, but Venus also did. And Eris, which is the contender to be the 10th planet. She's out near Pluto, but she's slightly smaller but heavier. And she's a really interesting retrograde as well. So there's a lot happening. And it was funny that I woke up yesterday morning with a message from a friend, can I have a chat? And we had this big hour chat about some challenges he was having in his life. And then at the end, it kind of twigged on me as I kind of woke up and went, what we've just talked about are issues around Venus, Chiron, and Eris.
So weird, isn't it?
Yeah. I don't know how it works, but it works, and that's what we're here to explore. Yep. So we will see you on Thursday for the masterclass. Make sure you grab your ticket, and we'll be back next week as we dive into Palo Santo, and we'll let you know then also what the other oils for August will be as well. Until then, look after yourselves, look after each other, and look after Mother Earth. And remember, always get sustainable essential oils.
See you soon.